You ever feel like your inner monologue just needs a serious editor? That constant stream of worries, self-doubt, just, well, noise.
Oh, absolutely. It can feel like you're trapped in a mental traffic jam, can it?
Exactly. And what if there was, like, a set of principles, maybe a shortcut, to clearing that inner congestion and finding some real peace of mind?
It's fascinating, isn't it, how universal that feeling is, that internal battleground. It really suggests we're all grappling with something fundamental about being human, how
Yeah.
we manage our thoughts and, the beliefs driving them.
And that's precisely what we're diving into today. We've got a really powerful source lined up: The Four Agreements, A Practical Guide to Personal Freedom by Don Miguel Ruiz.
A classic.
Right. And our listener today, there's someone who wants to get right to the core of valuable knowledge, wants it quick, wants it thorough, loves those aha moments, but without feeling totally swamped by details.
Gotcha. Someone who appreciates clarity and impact.
Exactly. So our mission for this deep dive, to really unpack the essential wisdom of these four agreements, we want to see how they can offer like a tangible route to breaking free from those nagging limitations we put on ourselves and finding genuine personal freedom.
And connecting this to the bigger picture, it's not just about, say, surface level stress relief. It's deeper. It's about fundamentally changing how you experience reality by uh, understanding and questioning the very agreements you've made with yourself, with the world.
Okay, so Ruiz bases this on the Toltec tradition. For anyone who might not know, who were the Toltec and why is their wisdom, relevant now?
Okay, so think back thousands of years ago, southern Mexico. The Toltecs, they were essentially ancient wisdom keepers. Not really a nation like we think of it, but more a society of, well, dedicated scientists and artists exploring spiritual understanding.
Scientists and artists, interesting combo.
Yeah. They gathered as masters and students at Teotihuacan, that incredible ancient city. Their whole focus was on understanding reality, achieving this state of being they called man becomes God. Basically, profound self-mastery,
Wow. Sounds pretty significant. So,
right?
why isn't this common knowledge then? What happened to their teachings?
Well, over time, partly due to historical events, partly the potential for misuse, the Neguals think of them as the masters, the guides who really embodied these principles. They had to conceal this ancestral wisdom.
Hide it away.
Pretty much. It was kept alive secretly for centuries, passed down through lineages. But prophecies apparently spoke of a time when this knowledge would need to be shared again. And Don Miguel Ruiz, and Miguel himself, felt the time was now. He felt called to bring these powerful Toltec teachings out into the open.
And it's important to understand, like Ruiz stresses, this isn't a religion with strict rules, right? It's more a way of life.
Precisely, yeah. While it respects all spiritual paths, the Toltec way, as Ruiz presents it, is fundamentally about finding accessible happiness and love right here, right now, in your everyday life. It's practical wisdom you can apply immediately, not just, a set of beliefs you have to sign up for.
All right, let's get into the core then. These
Uh-huh.
four agreements. But even before we get to them, Ruiz talks about some foundational ideas like domestication and the dream of the planet. What's that all about?
Yeah, these are really key to understanding why the four agreements work so well. So Ruiz explains that we're all born into what he calls the dream of the planet.
The dream of the planet.
Think of it like the collective consciousness, the unwritten rule book of society. Everything from how we greet each other to what we think success looks like, it's all part of this huge shared dream.
Okay.
It includes all the societal rules, beliefs, laws, religions, cultures, norms, everything that shapes how we see the world.
Right, so we step into this ongoing play, and it's already got all these expectations baked in. How do we get pulled into it? How does this domestication thing happen?
Well, from the moment we're born, our attention is basically hooked by everyone around us, parents, teachers, later the media, everything.
Mm.
And through constant repetition, they introduce us to the rules of this external dream.
Repetition, okay.
Yeah. We learn what to believe, what's acceptable behavior, what's right, what's wrong. It's like we're constantly being trained how to dream the way society dreams. Even language itself, Ruiz points out, is a huge part of this. Every word carries a meaning we've all sort of agreed upon.
So it's like we're programmed almost from birth, and this programming creates what he calls the book of law inside us.
Exactly. That book of law is our internalized belief system. All those rules, all those judgments we've absorbed and now just accept as, absolute truth.
Right.
And within our minds, Ruiz says two key players emerge from this domestication process. There's the judge.
Uh-huh. The inner critic?
That's the one. Constantly evaluating us, evaluating others, all based on this internal book of law. And then there's the victim.
A victim.
That's the part of us that internalizes all those judgments. It carries the blame, the guilt, the shame, the feeling of, I'm not good enough.
Oof. That inner judge. Yeah, that voice is always ready to jump in, isn't it? And the victim feeling like you messed up or you're just not measuring up. It's a powerful and often really negative combination.
It really is.
And this leads to what he calls a personal dream of hell. That sounds intense.
It does, but think about it. This constant inner judgment, based on beliefs we probably haven't even questioned, leads straight to self-rejection. And Ruiz calls the result emotional poison.
Emotional poison.
Yeah.
Like guilt, fear, anger.
Exactly. We're constantly measuring ourselves against some often impossible ideal in our book of law. And when we inevitably fall short, we generate all these negative emotions. He even throws out a pretty staggering statistic that something like 95% of the beliefs we hold, the ones stored in our book of law, are actually lies.
95%.
Yeah. Limitations we just accepted as truth. And this internal conflict, this relentless self-criticism, this cycle of negative emotion that creates a personal dream of hell. And it often just mirrors the suffering we see in the bigger societal dream.
Whoa.
And this, of course, speaks directly to what our listener wants: to not feel overwhelmed.
Right.
All this ingrained negativity, this mental clutter, it's a major source of that inner turmoil.
Okay, that paints a really clear, if slightly bleak picture. We're born into this societal dream. We get domesticated with all its rules, creating an inner judge and victim, leading to this personal hell of self-rejection. So how do we start to break free?
That's where the agreements come in, yeah.
That's exactly where they come in. They offer a way out.
Let's start with the first agreement. Be impeccable with your word. Sounds simple enough, but Ruiz really emphasizes its profound power. Oh, it's absolutely foundational. Ruiz argues that our word, it's pure creative power. It's not just the sounds we make. It's the force through which we express our intent, how we manifest everything in our lives. Think of it like a tool, a gift of creation we all have.
He talks about the word having two sides, like a coin, right? What are the implications there?
Yeah, exactly. One side is, well, the destructive potential,
Yeah.
the misused word gossip, negativity, self-criticism, like we just discussed, that can create a personal hell.
Okay.
But the other side is the impeccable word. And Ruiz says this has the power to create beauty, love, even, what you might call heaven on earth. So depending on how we wield it, our word can either liberate us or trap us even deeper in that initial dream.
So treat your words like seeds.
Precisely. Seeds you're planting in the fertile ground of your mind and the world. Choose wisely, because they will grow into something.
And what does impeccable really mean here? It's not just about being polite or avoiding swear words, is it?
No, it goes much deeper than that. Impeccable, Ruiz explains, literally means without sin. But sin, in this Toltec context, isn't really a religious thing. It's anything you do that goes against yourself.
And against yourself.
Yeah. Any negative thought, belief, or statement aimed at yourself,
Yeah.
that's a sin in this view. So being impeccable is the opposite. It means taking responsibility for your actions, yes, but without judging or blaming yourself. It's consciously choosing not to use your word against yourself or, by extension, against others in a harmful way.
He uses that powerful analogy of our minds being fertile ground.
Yeah.
What kind of seeds are we usually planting with our words then?
Unfortunately, way too often they're seeds of fear, negative opinions, doubts, limiting beliefs, all that stuff. Ruiz gives the really chilling example of how someone like Hitler used words to sow seeds of fear that grew into massive destruction. It just shows the immense power of language.
Yeah.
And he also points out how just a single negative word, like a little verbal spell, can create huge, unnecessary drama in our lives and in other people's lives too.
And he specifically calls out gossip, right? Calls it black magic. Why is gossip so bad in his view?
He sees gossip as pure emotional poison, and it spreads like wildfire. We learn it through agreement, right? We see adults doing it, sharing opinions about others, often negatively, maybe based on assumptions, and that negativity just gets transferred through the words. He compares gossip to a computer virus, this damaging code that infects our mental programming, creates chaos, clouds our judgment. He even talks about black magicians, people who intentionally spread negativity, like computer hackers planting bad code.
And it's not just about what we say about other people, is it? We gossip with ourselves, too, inside our heads.
Oh, absolutely. That internal dialogue, it's often just full of negative self-talk. I'm not smart enough. I'll never manage that. I look awful. This constant inner criticism is a prime example of misusing our word against ourselves, reinforcing those negative self-beliefs over and over.
So how does actually being impeccable with our word help? How does it lead to like self-love and inner peace?
Well, when we make a real conscious commitment to be impeccable with our word, Ruiz says truth starts to manifest through us. It cleans out all that built-up emotional poison.
Yeah.
Our minds become fertile ground for seeds of love, positivity, instead of fear and doubt. And ultimately, the impeccability of your word, which he says you can measure by the level of self-love, it gives you a kind of immunity. Immunity to negative spells from others, and it leads to just a greater sense of well-being, happiness, inner peace.
That makes a lot of sense. If you stop tearing yourself down and stop poisoning the well with others, yeah, it creates a much healthier space inside and out. Okay, let's move to the second agreement. Don't take anything personally. This one. This one can be really tough in practice.
It really can.
Yeah.
Especially because, our whole domestication trains us to think everything is somehow about us.
Yeah.
But Ruiz's point is stark. Nothing others do is because of you. Nothing. It's always a projection of their own internal world, their own dream, their agreements, their perspectives, their baggage. What other people do and say, it's a window into their reality, not a reflection of your worth. Their opinions are their dream, not your reality.
He talks about personal importance being the root cause here. What does he mean by that?
Personal importance.
Mm.
It's basically the assumption that everything revolves around me. We learn growing up to think we're responsible for everything, that people's actions and words are direct comments on us.
Right. Like if someone's in a bad mood, it must be my fault.
Exactly. But the reality, according to Ruiz, is that everyone is living in their own completely unique mental universe, their own distinct dream. And it's fundamentally different from yours. So when you take something personally, you're basically trying to force your interpretation onto their world. And you're assuming they see things exactly like you do, which they almost never do.
Can you give us a practical example? Like, how is someone else's action not about us, even if it feels really directed at us?
Sure. Okay. Imagine someone cuts you off in traffic, leans on the horn, maybe shouts something nasty.
Yeah, it happens all the time.
Right. Ruiz would say, don't take it personally. That person, they're probably dealing with their own stress, maybe running late, maybe just had a fight with someone. Their reaction says way more about their internal state than it does about you as a person. They're trying to dump some of their emotional poison, basically.
Yeah.
But if you don't take it personally, if you don't accept it, that poison stays with them. It doesn't get into your system.
Okay.
And it works for positive things, too. If someone gives you a huge compliment, great, appreciate it. But it's still a reflection of their perception in that moment. It doesn't define your absolute, unchanging worth.
So, by consciously choosing not to take things personally, we build up a kind of resistance to this emotional poison that people might be slinging around, sometimes without even meaning to.
Precisely. Ruiz calls taking things personally a form of self-importance that makes us super easy targets to those black magicians, people trying to inflict emotional pain, consciously or not. But when you really practice the second agreement, you become like,
Teflon.
Teflon. Yeah, negativity just slides right off, doesn't stick. This agreement gives you incredible freedom,
Yeah.
resilience against that constant barrage of outside opinions and judgments. And that contributes massively to that clear, peaceful mind our listeners are looking for.
That's a great image, being Teflon. Okay, on to the third agreement. Don't make assumptions. This feels like, well, a huge key to avoiding so much pointless conflict.
Oh, absolutely huge. Ruiz states it pretty directly. Making assumptions leads straight to misunderstandings, which then leads to taking things personally. That's agreement 2. And that just creates loads of unnecessary drama.
Yeah.
It's kind of a natural result of that internal mitote he talks about, that chaotic storm of thoughts and voices swirling in our mind.
To mental chatter.
Exactly. We have this tendency to only see and hear what we want to see and hear, or what fits our existing beliefs, not necessarily what's actually being said or done. So that mitote, that chatter, it actually pushes us to make assumptions just to try and quiet the noise, to create some sense of order, even if it's wrong.
He also links making assumptions to our, basic human need to justify and understand everything. Can you unpack that a bit?
Yeah, our minds naturally crave certainty,
Yeah.
right? We want to feel safe. So when we encounter something we don't understand, maybe someone's behavior, we feel this pressure to fill in the blanks. And that's where assumptions rush in.
To make sense of it.
Right. We invent stories, often with zero factual basis, just to make things make sense in our heads and feel a bit more secure. We assume we know what others are thinking, what their motives are, even if we haven't actually talked to them about it.
And this is super common and often super problematic in relationships, isn't it? That classic thing of expecting your partner to just know what you want without you ever saying it.
Oh, textbook example. Ruiz points out how often we assume our partners are mind readers. And then, when they inevitably don't meet these unspoken expectations, we feel hurt, maybe resentful, totally misunderstood, and boom, unnecessary conflict.
Yeah.
We also tend to assume our partners see the relationship or marriage or life the same way we do, which is almost never completely true. These unvoiced assumptions are just breeding grounds for disappointment and fights.
And it's not just romantic partners, is it? We do this with pretty much everyone. Colleagues, friends, strangers.
Totally. We assume everyone sees the world just like we do, thinks like we think, feels like we feel. And this can actually lead to a fear of being our real selves around people because we project our own judgments and assumptions onto them, assuming they'll judge us.
We even do it to ourselves, right? Assuming we can't do something, or maybe assuming we're better than we are.
Exactly. Overestimating, underestimating assumptions about our own capabilities are really common too.
So what's the fix? What's the antidote to this constant assumption making?
It's simple, but not always easy. Clear, direct communication.
Ask questions.
Yes. Instead of jumping to conclusions, ask. If you're unsure about something, seek clarification. Find the courage to ask. Ruiz really emphasizes this. The moment you stop making assumptions, your communication becomes, as he puts it, clean and clear, free of that emotional poison we keep talking about.
Right?
And this doesn't just radically improve your personal relationships. It also reinforces the first agreement being impeccable with your word. Honestly, with clear communication, just think how many problems, from tiny personal spats to huge societal conflicts, could potentially just dissolve.
It sounds so logical when you put it like that, but man, it's a habit that's so ingrained, isn't it? It takes real conscious effort to stop jumping to conclusions.
Okay, that brings us to the fourth agreement. Always do your best. Ruiz says this is the one that lets the other three really sink in and become habits. How does it do that? Yeah, this last one is kind of the engine that keeps the first three running consistently. And Ruiz is really clear. Your best isn't some fixed standard. It's going to change from moment to moment, day to day.
Depends on how you're feeling.
Exactly. Depends on your energy levels, if you're sick or healthy, your emotional state, all of it. So it's not about pushing for some impossible ideal of perfection 24/7. It's about putting in the maximum effort you genuinely can muster in that specific moment.
He warns against both pushing too hard and not trying hard enough, though. What are the dangers there?
Right.
Yeah.
If you consistently try to do more than your best, you just burn yourself out. You deplete your energy. You end up going against yourself, ironically making it harder to achieve your goals long term.
Okay, makes sense.
But conversely, if you regularly do less than your best, you open the door to frustration, self-criticism, guilt, regret, all that stuff the judge loves. So the key is finding that sustainable, balanced effort for right now.
And how does consistently doing our best help shut down that inner judge we talked about?
Well, think about it. If you consciously and consistently do your best, you basically take away the judge's main ammunition. If you know deep down, okay, I gave that situation everything I had at that time, then the inner judge has no legitimate grounds to find you guilty or heap blame on you.
Ah, okay. Takes the wind out of its sails.
Exactly. That simple act of just doing your best starts to break a major spell, that pattern of self-punishment.
He also makes an interesting point about doing things just for a reward versus doing them for the love of doing them.
Yeah, that's crucial too. He observes that many of us are conditioned to act only when we expect some external reward, a paycheck, praise, whatever. But that creates an underlying resistance to the action itself.
Right, you're just doing it to get something.
Precisely. But when you do your best simply because you find joy or satisfaction in the process, sure, external rewards might still show up, but you're not attached to them. You're fully present, enjoying the action itself. And this intrinsic motivation also helps keep boredom and frustration at bay.
So always do your best isn't really about hitting some external target, but more about a personal commitment to living, to the process, and accepting ourselves even when we stumble.
That's it, exactly. It's about embracing the whole learning process. Recognizing mistakes will happen, they're part of it, and just continuously trying to increase your awareness and effort from where you are. It becomes like a personal ritual of self-love and self-respect. You're honoring your own journey, and you stop letting the judge constantly derail you. Ruiz really encourages seeing it as this ongoing practice, a way to nurture growth and learn more effectively.
Okay, these four agreements together offer such a compelling way forward, but realistically, given all that deep domestication we talked about, actually living by them consistently sounds like, well, a pretty big job. How do we even start breaking those old ingrained agreements and move towards this freedom?
Yeah, it's definitely a process. Ruiz emphasizes that real freedom isn't about the usual things society tells us money, status, whatever. True freedom is the liberation of our spirit to be who we really are.
Our authentic selves.
Exactly. And he reminds us the main obstacles are internal. That judge, the victim, our whole belief system, they keep us locked in. So he introduces this powerful idea of the warrior.
The warrior.
Yeah, the spiritual warrior. Someone who actively rebels against that inner parasite, the judge, victim, limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
Someone fighting for the basic right to use their own mind, to live by their own truth, not the program they were given.
Okay, so how does this warrior fight? He mentions a few ways attacking the parasite, stopping feeding it, and something called the initiation of the dead. Sounds intense.
They're powerful metaphors for different aspects of the inner work,
Oh,
really.
all right.
Attacking head by head is like facing your fears and limiting beliefs one by one, consciously challenging them.
Okay.
Stopping feeding the parasite is about developing awareness of your emotional reactions, noticing when you're indulging in negativity, self-pity, or blame, and consciously choosing not to give it energy, starving it out, basically.
Right. Cut off its food supply.
Exactly. And the initiation of the dead, that represents a more profound shift. It's like a symbolic death of the old self, the old parasitic belief system, to make space for a completely new, authentic way of being to emerge.
And all this work leads to what he calls the dream of the second attention.
That's the goal, yes. The dream of the first attention is the reality we were programmed into by domestication. The dream of the second attention is about consciously choosing new beliefs, deliberately reprogramming our own minds with new agreements, like actively adopting and living the four agreements. It's taking back the reins of your own mental landscape, shaping your own reality on purpose.
So the ultimate destination then is this heaven on earth, this new dream. What does that actually look like, feel like?
Ruiz paints a really beautiful picture. It's a state where you perceive love and everything around you, where you live without that constant nagging fear of being judged or rejected, where you can love others unconditionally, and maybe most importantly, where you have profound self-love. And he points out, this isn't some unique Toltec idea. It resonates with concepts in many spiritual traditions. You know, the Promised Land, Nirvana, the Kingdom of Heaven. It's that state of liberation. And achieving it, he says, requires actively changing our core agreements and finally releasing that inner parasite that thrives on negativity.
It really sounds like a fundamental shift in perception, a whole new way of being in the world. So wrapping this up, what's the key takeaway? What's the invitation here for our listener?
I think the core message is really to sincerely consider making a conscious agreement with yourself. An agreement to honor and actually live by these four agreements, to see them not just as, interesting ideas in a book, but as a truly practical and powerful pathway, a path towards genuine personal freedom and consciously creating your own experience of heaven on earth right here in your daily life.
So to quickly recap, the four agreements give us this practical framework to break free from limiting beliefs, find more inner peace. It starts with being impeccable with your word.
Using your power for truth and love.
Right. Then not taking anything personally.
Remembering it's not about you.
Avoiding making assumptions.
Asking questions. Communicating clearly.
And finally, always doing your best.
Moment by moment, with self-compassion. It's really a path to reclaiming ourselves from that old programming.
Yeah. Taking back our own minds.
Absolutely. And maybe as a final thought for you, our listener, to chew on. As you reflect on these four agreements, which one resonates most strongly right now? Which one feels like the biggest hurdle, maybe, in your life currently? And which of your deeply held, maybe unconscious agreements might you consider challenging first, as you start to step onto your own path of creating your version of heaven on earth? Just think about the immense power locked up in your word, and the incredible freedom that can come when you start letting go of those old, limiting stories you tell yourself.
Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into the four agreements. We really hope this exploration has sparked some valuable insights or maybe a fresh perspective for you.
Hope it was helpful.
We'll be back soon with another fascinating topic to unpack together.